The Secret of the Conde Hermanos by Clarissa Bell. Chapter 14. If Dr. Cordero had lacked his foresight to present Paloma with her father's childhood notebook in the brief window of his remaining time on earth, given the unseen turn of events, she may have sunk, not unlike her mother, into a clinical depression. For she knew that had accounted for her seen very little of her mother in the last 10 years since her father's death. That's all it takes, I suppose. Paloma thought, one death too many. At least her mother had her painting to keep her going and had managed to channel her sadness into a productive career. Paloma doubted she could have done the same, and not for the sage-like advice of her uncle, would have never been able to take on the responsibility of her father's gallery. Paloma, what I'm about to tell you is age-old wisdom. Take it to heart, for it will serve you well, he had told her after her father's funeral in the Carmelite monastery in Big Sur. It isn't so much what life gives you, but that you should concern yourself. It's more about how you take what life gives you, for there are always two ways. Life, dear child, may hand you a beautiful rose, and you may unwittingly choose to take it by the thorns instead of carefully by the stem. As a consequence, you may bleed a little, which was not life's intention for you. However, life may sometimes offer you a knife. It's up to you to take it by the handle and not the blade. You see, little dove, life never intentionally sets out to harm us. It simply presents us with choices. It takes a little thought, Paloma, that's all. Promise me you'll always choose thoughtfully. And now, faced with the passing of her dear uncle himself, she saw in her father's notebook a means by which to take the proverbial knife by the handle. The irony that the child her father once had been could now reach out to comfort a woman his own child had become was lost on her. She decided that she would begin to keep her own field journal, and what better place to record her drawings and observations than the harbor seal colony at Hopkins Beach, which she and her uncle had spent their last afternoon together. She felt certain that this decision was a thoughtful one. And her next decision, she felt, was also in the same category. She had attended a series of public lectures at Hopkins Marine Station in the evolutionary biology of the harbor seal, given by a certain graduate student named Jack Lambert. And this had done much to deepen her understanding of the seal's curious physiology. For example, harbor seals had once been terrestrial animals of the order carnivore, not unlike the dog. In choosing to return to the sea, however, they had forfeited much in the way of their land characteristics. As they became more streamlined for easier movement in the water, they lost their no longer necessary ear flaps, as sound travels far better in water than in the air, and they instead concealed their rather large, well-developed ears inside their head. Their hind flippers, which had once been legs, became useless for movement on land by remaining permanently pointed backward. In the sea, this allowed them to swim in a sculling motion at speeds of up to 18 miles per hour. Only the great white shark, their primary predator, could swim faster. While their forelegs had all disappeared, their short front flippers were fur-covered and retained all the bones equivalent to that of the human hand, complete with a nail on each finger. Having dispensed entirely with collarbones, these seals had acquired astonishing elasticity and could gracefully arch their entire body like a crescent moon when avoiding incoming surf or scratching themselves from nose tip to belly, as was their wont. But perhaps the most interesting of all these physiological adaptations was the process by which they slowed their metabolism during prolonged dives. In this way, the seals slowed the circulation of their blood to eke out of all available oxygen, making it possible for them to remain underwater for as long as 45 minutes. In spite of all this, Paloma was surprised to find out they still gave birth on dry land to pups. They did not know how to swim. Indeed, they seemed to be precariously straddled two vastly different realms. But it was when Jack Lambert's discourse had veered eloquently into the third realm, in which seals also held a rightful place, the realm of myth and legend, that Paloma sat in rapt attention. For nowhere in the world where seals and humans had lived in close proximity was without a vast wealth of superstition and folklore surrounding the relationship between the two species. The tales usually involved seals who could take on human form at will, or men who married seal women, or seals who saved fishermen imperiled at sea, or even seals who could both talk and sing. From what mysterious point of origin can we suppose all these extraordinary yet strangely universal claims have come? Jack Lambert, in conclusion, had asked his audience rhetorically, for they all knew the answer was an old and forgotten one, belonging, as Uncle Carlos would have said, to a place that didn't exist any longer and hadn't existed for a very long time.